Welcome back to Wine and Dine, the show about great food, great wine, and entertaining. I'm your host, Mark DeWolf. And in today's tasty edition, brought to you by the Saltwire Network, we're going to be pairing up vegan food and wine. The Gen Zs and the millennials of the world may not realize it, but there was a time when you walked into a restaurant and you said, I'd like to have a vegan or vegetarian meal. You got some lettuce or a pasta primavera dish. That's all the choice was. You know, a lot of things have changed in the last 20 years with more people enjoying plant-based cuisine. Even the best restaurants of the world are now adapting. The Michelin Guide, which is kind of the authority of great restaurants of the world, identifies 11 restaurants as being worthy of a Michelin star. You know, having 11 vegan restaurants having a Michelin star is unheard of. There's even one with 3, led by a Canadian chef. Now, when it comes to more everyday, we see restaurants like Envie here in Halifax and a multitude of others that are embracing vegan, vegetarian, plant-based cuisine and bringing that to restaurant goers around Atlantic Canada. So when it comes to home cooking and infusing your vegan food with flavor, I got some rules. And I actually think vegan and vegetarian cuisine opens up some doors. You know, first rule, use lots of herbs and spices. If you think vegetarian and vegan food is going to lack flavor, this is where you bring in those fresh herbs, especially those spices from the Middle East and India. A lot of people get worried that they're not going to fill up on vegan and vegetarian cuisine. But if you use lots of beans and legumes and grains, you can really bulk up your vegan cuisine. And there's a lot of options out there. I love things like, just rice, but farro, couscous, quinoa, all sorts of chickpeas. All these things can add body and substance to a vegan menu item. Umami. Now that's not a word you hear all that often, but it's this savory, I got to call it like the yum factor of certain foods. It's there in dry aged meat, aged cheeses, some fish, things like soy too. But you can find it in other things in vegetarian-based cuisine. So fermented food, sauerkraut, kimchi, mushrooms, especially dried mushrooms, and tomatoes. And again, tomatoes too. Think of dried tomatoes. Those can really add a lot of umami and savoriness to your dishes. You can live without dairy. I don't, but you can. So there's a lot of good dairy substitutes out there. Almond butter, cashew butter, almond milk, other things that can substitute for dairy items. And then when it comes to grilled vegetables, you can do all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be steamed or poached or boiled to death like my grandma used to do. Grill them, roast them, intensify the flavors. And when we come back, we're going to talk about pairing vegan food with wine. Okay, so welcome back to Wine and Dine. So let's talk about pairing vegan cuisine with wines. You know, a friend of mine, Jennifer Hewler, is a master sommelier, in fact only one of 5 master sommeliers in Canada, wrote a book on pairing wines with plant-based cuisine. So she has some tips. So green foods, broccoli, arugula, rapini, things like that. Green wines, green meaning fresh. Things like Vinho Verde from Portugal, Grüner Veltliner from Austria. Umami rich, that savoriness of food. Dishes like that, off-dry, fruity whites. German Riesling, great pairing. Have some classic, in your cabinet, always ready to go wines. Pinot Noir, Gamay Noir, Barbera from northern Italy. If you like big, bold red wines, you can still drink them and have them with plant-based cuisine, but you gotta change your cooking methods. Roast, grill, smoke your food to go with bigger styles. And lastly, one of my recommendations is to get introduced to orange wine. So this is white wine fermented on the skin, just like they would make red wine. Gives new flavors, dried fruits, tea, dried leaves, floral tones, but also a little tannic structure to your white wines. Great with Moroccan, Middle Eastern, Indian cuisine. So come right back and we're going to talk about what are vegan wines. Okay, so welcome back. And you may think all wines are vegan. You'd be wrong. It's easy and it's logical to think so because, wines are made from grapes, right? But there's some other things in the wine that you may not know about. So traditionally, wineries would add things like isinglass, fish bladder, gelatin, or egg whites to a wine after it's fermented to kind of bind with particles and make the wine clear as we see it today. Now, there are definitely non-animal based ways to do it, and a lot of wineries do that. But you then want to look to see if they identify that on the back label, and a great way to do it is just to look for these vegan symbols. We'll pop them up. Now, if you're a strict vegan, meaning you don't want any animal inputs even in the vineyard, so things like manure, that's a little more challenging. In fact, there's only one winery in North America that is certified biocyclic vegan. So that is no animal inputs in the vineyard, no animal inputs in the winery. Lucky for us, they are here in Nova Scotia. So Lackady Vineyards is the only winery that has this very strict certification. Let's talk about the food and pairing the food. So I think when Jen does she's not always thinking strictly about vegan wine. She's talking about, those of us that just like to eat plant-based cuisine because it's healthier. So from her book, we have these great little, they call them crabby cakes. They're actually chickpeas, palms of heart, artichoke, and a bunch of spices like Dijon mustard and a few other things, made like a crab cake, fried off and served with this dilly mayonnaise. And Jen recommends serving that with a South African Chenin Blanc or French Chenin Blanc from Loire, something called Savennière. That's if you can afford it. Usually they're about $35, $40. This is a recipe I've done there. It's cauliflower fritters with a little cilantro sauce. I'd say you break out an orange wine like this from Gerard Bertrand, or maybe a Viognier. Now, for another dish from Jen's book that I really love, it's this stuffed eggplant dish. So I've grilled off these eggplants just in a pan, and then I'm gonna fill it this wonderful mix of like tomatoes, mint, currants, pine nuts, balsamic vinegar. Throw it in the oven at 350 degrees for half an hour, and then lo and behold, you have this hearty vegetarian, actually vegan dish. What to pair with it? Well, Jen recommends Malbec. So this is a great Malbec from Susanna Balbo, available at Bishop Cellar. Another great pairing and a go-to wine for Jen would be a Barbera from Northern Italy. Both work. So anyway, come back next week. We'll have another episode of Wine and Dine. You'll find the recipes at the end of this video.